this hearing today. I thank you for this. And Ms. Wynn Williams, I want to thank you for stepping forward and for speaking. Senator Blumenthal and I last year brought forward the Kids Online Safety Act, and this is a piece of legislation we have worked on for years. It came through the Senate on a 91-3 vote. It failed in the House. As you would imagine, Meta spent millions of dollars lobbying against us and against the legislation, while at the same time they were claiming how much they cared for children and how they wanted to take care of children. And of course, one of the problems, as we have heard these heartbreaking stories from parents of trying to reach out to Meta, no response, of the cyberbullying that was taking place, the pleas from principals and child psychiatrists to do something, and yet they would not do it. And I noted in your book that you talked about Meta targeting children with ads based on their emotional state. And if you want to talk about something that is cruel, I'm a mom and a grandmom, and to kick a kid when they're down, that in essence is what it is kicking them while they're down. That is completely disgusting. And I find it so interesting that Mark Zuckerberg has said he's turned over a new leaf. My response to that was, leaves change color with the seasons of the year. And I am curious as to whether this is a season for him or if it is something that is truly going to be making a difference. And I think he should explain to us. He's been before this committee before, where he truly is. Now, one of the things we found out from other whistleblowers, and you mentioned in your book that Meta's statement denying it engaged in targeting children was a flat-out lie, and the company had refused to audit these activities. We've heard that from other whistleblowers, that they were doing research and they knew what was happening, but they were so given to the dollar and having children as the product that they themselves, children were addicted, but also Facebook and their leadership team had become addicted to the power that they held and to the money that they were making. But talk to me a little bit about your experience with Meta and how they would choose to cover up or deny that they were harming kids.
Thank you, Senator. One example is that Facebook was targeting 13 to 17-year-olds. It could identify when they were feeling worthless or helpless or like a failure. And they would take that information and share it with advertisers. One of the things about advertising is advertisers understand that when people don't feel good about themselves, it's often a good time to pitch a product. You know, people are more likely to buy something. And so what the company was doing was letting these advertisers know that these 13 to 17-year-olds were feeling depressed and saying, now's a really good time to serve them an advertisement. Or if a 13-year-old girl would delete a selfie, that's a really good time to try and sell her a beauty product. Or if a 13-year-old girl is...
So let me interrupt right there.
Sure.
If she deleted a selfie, then Facebook was in essence, or Meta, Instagram, they were in essence tracking her activity online.
Absolutely. That was taken as a signal and then shared with advertisers.
So they didn't stay given specifically to their app. They traveled in the child's phone.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think it points up some of the harm. that is there. One of the things I wanted we've talked about China and their launch of apps, Facebook's apps in China. I wanted to see if you could elaborate on the type data that would be found on Facebook servers located in China and the broader implications of allowing the CCP to have access to that data.
Senator, I mean, we've just spoken in your last question about, just one example of the amount of information that this company has. It is unfathomable. It's very, very hard to wrap your mind around the amount of data that this company has on each person who logs on to its service. It's private messages, but so much data. And all of that would channel through a POP server.
So then it is not just limited. The data Facebook holds, or Meta holds, is not just limited to the Meta applications.
Not at all, Senator.
So basically, Meta has the ability to build what I call a virtual you of an individual, where they go, the transactions they have, the different apps that they rotate from one to another. Is that accurate?
Absolutely, Senator.
Okay, thank you. I've got one other question I want to come to you on, and we have heard not only from you, but from others, that Mark Zuckerberg would veto recommendations from his team when it came to improving practices that would protect children or would protect data. And he would do this because he would say it was too costly. And I just find that astounding. In the physical world, we have laws that protect an individual's privacy. We have laws that protect children and protect them from being exposed to certain harms like alcohol, tobacco, sales, meeting predators, pedophiles. So I wanted to know if you had witnessed that he or the other C-suite were actually vetoing recommendations that would have provided consumer protection and protection of children in the virtual space.
Yes, Senator, and as a mother of 3 children, that's one of the more difficult aspects to reconcile with this company, that it is not a company that looks after users, particularly those 13 to 17, which they regard as vulnerable yet very valuable.
And then how long were you employed at Facebook and when was your last day?
I was employed from 2011 and it's slightly complicated, but I finished in the end of 2017.
I take very seriously adversaries having access to critical technology such as artificial intelligence, and I noted in my opening statement you made allegations about Meta's efforts to help China's government in that field. In your opening statement, you said that Meta's goal was to help China outcompete American companies. Can you explain why they would want to do this, and is there any documentation on that point?
Thank you, Senator. They saw, I guess, part of the value proposition that they could provide the Chinese Communist Party was their expertise in helping Chinese officials. So they explicitly, and I would be happy to provide you with the documentation, called out US firms. They said, we can help you, China, not have to rely on firms like Cisco or IBM, because we can help you with the technical expertise. So they were offering things like how to build more efficient data centers, or how to ensure that engineers could better understand technology like photo tagging.
Okay. And then, and by the way, that documentation would be appreciated. What was Meta's ultimate goal when they briefed Chinese government on artificial intelligence technology, and what information and technology did they provide?
So I think it links to this value proposition. Meta has some of the best minds of a generation. They've employed the smartest graduates working on cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence. So who better, if you're the Chinese Communist Party, to teach you about these technologies than Meta? In terms of understanding the extent of this, I think this is a really great area for your investigation.
Now that Facebook has changed its name to Meta, is Meta currently providing the Chinese government with access to artificial intelligence technology?
So it's been well reported that Chinese researchers have used the Llama model both for AI weapons and also that Llama is part of what powers DeepSeek.
Please describe for the committee how Meta planned to share data from American citizens with the Chinese government, and for example, did Meta have any agreements with the Communist Chinese government to provide them with the data, and if so, do they still have those agreements, as far as you can tell that you've been gone from the company?
So part of the challenge, as I mentioned, was building like the internet infrastructure to support their China ambitions, and it was through that internet infrastructure that they would gain access to potentially American citizens' data. I think, again, this is another very good area to investigate and get further information directly from the company.
Who at Meta facilitated these conversations, and what officials in the Chinese government did Meta staff meet with?
So there were many meetings between the Chinese Communist Party and Meta. So right from the top, Mark Zuckerberg met with Lu Wei. There were lots of visits back and forth between Beijing and Menlo Park. There were lots of meetings with senior Politburo, senior CCP members, and I'd be happy to provide more documentation on this to the committee.
Okay. Then my last question follows on where Chairman Hawley left off. If there's anything that you can add to this, you don't have to repeat what you told him, but describe to the committee how Meta planned to share data from American citizens with the Chinese government, and for I don't think I'm going to ask that question. I think you covered it well.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Thank you for being here. Thank you for these questions. Ms. Wynn-Williams, can I just go back to something you said a moment ago in response to Senator Grassley, and maybe let's just start at the beginning. So is it your testimony that Facebook executives and employees cultivated relationships with members of the Chinese Communist Party? Cultivated relationships with members of the Chinese Communist Party?
Absolutely, Senator.
And this happened over a period of years?
This happened over many years.
And did members of the Facebook executive team or other employees at Facebook, Meta, ever brief members of the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes, Senator, regularly.
Exchanged information with them?
Yes, Senator.
What are some of the topics that they covered in these briefings?
I mean, it's incredibly broad. So you had meetings at the top executive level, so Mark and Cheryl, and you had meetings, all the way down to, regular engineers who would be providing briefings on cutting edge technology like facial recognition, which is obviously very helpful to the Chinese Communist Party. Facebook Live, as I mentioned, photo tagging. internet infrastructure, so how to build effective data centers. Facebook has a project called the Open Compute Project, which has 5 Chinese companies as a member of it. So it was at every level on every aspect of the many different technology that Facebook has.
You testified a moment ago that one of the things that part of their value proposition to China was that they would help them, Facebook that is, would help China outcompete other American businesses. Can you just say more about that? I mean, that seems like an extraordinary thing to me. Here you have an American company going to our chief foreign adversary on whom we currently have tariffs of like 10 billion%, and saying, hey, we'd love to help you. We would love to help you beat all of these other American companies. That's extraordinary. I mean, what can you tell us about that?
I mean, I'd be happy to provide the documentation. I mean, literally the documents in which they were writing this were called our value proposition to be put before the CCP.
So was information related to artificial intelligence part of these briefings? I know you said that there were some sort of informal discussions, but did Facebook actually brief members of the CCP on artificial intelligence, to your knowledge?
Yes, Senator.
And again, was that a once-off, or was this a regular thing?
Senator, I think this is a great area of investigation for your committee.
So why would, you were at Facebook a long time, why would Facebook want to help China with artificial intelligence? I mean, what's the strategy there, do you think? What do you divine the intent to have been?
I think there are lots. So I think we've talked about the general focus of the company of wanting to help China. This is over a period of time where China was rapidly trying to increase its own technological expertise and trying to had to grow its own homegrown technology company. So it's incredibly valuable to have the brightest minds in the world show you how that technology works, and then I think at the moment, as you're aware, there's a debate in the AI community around whether open source models or closed models are more appropriate. And one of the considerations around that is national security. But it's not clear at this moment whether open source models or closed models will ultimately prevail, and there's a lot of money on the line. In some ways, you could say it's helpful if you want open source to prevail to have a strong threat from a Chinese model, so that you can say it's really important that America wins this, and we are the American open source option. And I think you can see the way that strategically plays out.
So what you're saying is Facebook's AI model, Llama, I think it's called, that's an open source model, is that right?
Correct.
And I think they just released Llama 4 or something just recently, the last few days. So that's an open source model. Many of the other American competitors, Sam Altman's company, for example, OpenAI, is a closed-sourced model, closed-source code. So Facebook has a fundamentally different take, an open-source model. They're briefing the Chinese government, including CCP officials, on this model, on their information, and then we get the revelation of DeepSeek just a few months ago, China's sort of breakthrough on AI. Do you think that Llama had something to do with DeepSeek? Do you think that information sharing helped lead to DeepSeek?
I think it's been widely reported that the DeepSeek model is in part based on Llama.
And so just playing this out, if China's DeepSeek model, another open source model, I think, right, becomes the chief competitor to these other models in the United States, what you're saying is that it stands to reason, and this is something for us to look into certainly, but it stands to reason that in a way Facebook would benefit from that, because you've got this threat in DeepSeek. Facebook is the only other really major American open source model out there. The others aren't built on that platform. So, Facebook's, their profile is raised, the significance of their model is raised, and maybe they become more important than ever. I mean, does that stand to reason?
I think it's a winner-takes-all situation, and I think that would set up Meta in a very strong position.
And as usual with Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, they intend to win and take all. Senator